Welcome, everyone, to Talks with Me, a podcast entertainment edition. This is the only podcast that breaks down the journey on how to become the next media mogul with weekly episodes with the entertainment industry's biggest game changers. This week, we have a multi talented artist and talent in the building, Sasha Merci Medina. You probably have seen her on many different platforms, but let's get into her bio. She is a second generation Dominican American actress, stand-up comic, and influencer. You've probably seen her face in De Lo Mio, Righteous Thieves, or Head Over Heel, or you might have seen her on platforms like Fuse, Complex, and Freeform. Thank you for being here, Sasha. I appreciate it.
Oh, thank you for having me.
So today I want to talk to you a little bit about you as an actress and comedian, but that transition to becoming those things and kind of what the balance is and keeping all of this stuff like aligned and allowing you to progress. So I like to start my interviews off with this question of how long has it taken you to get here where you are today? So what has that been for you? How many years?
Oh my God. I just feel like I'm still in that journey, but I would say like 6 years of just 6, 7 years of just like really working towards my goal and my dreams. And I feel like this year is the year where I just feel like everything is becoming organized and it's
Mhm.
becoming more clear on what my North Star is, which is so interesting because when I first started in this industry, I always knew what I wanted to do, but I just
Mhm.
kind of was distracted by all these other things of like, what is popular now, like what is trending and like being part of trends, which is very common now,
Yeah.
but ever. And I just think that now, like, I just want to create things that are like food for the soul, you know,
Mhm.
and before when I started social media, I just kind of was just doing content where I wasn't really thinking about what the impact of what I'm saying. I just said things that were relatable to me and my friends. And that's when I learned the importance of relatability. But when it
Mhm.
got to a point where there was a lot of expectations of me, I think I started losing my originality and my authenticity because then I started to cater to what I thought people wanted from me.
Yeah, I'm so glad you touched on that because I was actually going to ask you that when it came to like you starting to become like an influencer, like influential on social media, like what was that journey? Because you touched on it. Like I was curious to know if, were you creating content just because like it was a trend or was it something else or were you doing it with the hopes of like just becoming a stand-up comedian? Like for you, was there an end goal or is kind of just like I'm just putting out content because it's funny and it feels good?
Well, I'll say this. Ever since I was a child or like a kid,
Mhm.
I always knew I wanted to be an entertainer. I always knew I liked what I always knew was that I loved making people feel good. And I love that I can bring joy. Like I think that the best um currency you can give another human is joy in the present moment. So I
Yeah.
knew that I like to do that. I knew that I like to like make people laugh and like kind of like more of a distraction of like how shitty the world could be.
Hmm.
And I realized that it started within my own family. Like if I knew there's a family get together and I knew
Hmm.
there was a potential like altercation that was gonna happen, I would decide to be like the loudest one in the room and like be funny and be like, yo, 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 look at this, look at this.
Be
So
the distraction.
it's like
Yeah.
being this distraction of like, oh my God, look, so let me tell you. And then it kind of like blossomed from there. Like it was a tool to like just bring um what is that? Like peace. Like I can't think of the actual word, but it was like bring serenity within
Mhm.
my space. And then it just spiraled into what it became. But I always knew I wanted to be an entertainer. And but I never really put my foot forward to make that happen. So when social media happened, I was only doing videos for me and my friends. I didn't know that it would become as big as it did because I was already working a really good job, 401k,
I was gonna
making
say, where were you working? Was it in
money.
entertainment?
Oh my
Okay.
God. I was working the hotel
Oh,
and
okay.
it was like what, 18 now? No, I started when I was 20 years old. And I just remember like at 20 years old at that time, just getting paid 20,000 an hour. Like, and then all of a sudden, like I was there for 7 years and it just kept getting more money, more money, more money.
Mhm.
So for me, it was just like, oh, like this is just a way to express myself. I didn't know it was gonna turn into my career. And
When I was about to say, what was that moment for you? Like, when did you actually know that you could make a living off of this?
when it was, I was just bombarded with opportunities,
Mm.
and I was just like, oh my God. And then when celebrities that I knew who I was, when celebrities were
Well,
like, oh my God, you're that funny girl on social media. And I was like, how the fuck,
was there
And
one specific celebrity that like just blew your mind in the beginning that knew
oh
you?
my God, Nicky Jam. There was Nicky Jam, I think at the time he was like the biggest reggaeton artist at the time.
Hmm.
And I just remember him being like, yo, you're so funny. Like, keep doing what you're doing. And then I was just like, and then later on, like LL Cool J has been someone who's like been supportive, Questlove, like just a lot of people a lot of great people that I've met in this industry.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Going back a little bit into what you said about like kind of before you felt like you were doing certain things because it was popular versus now you're doing it because more it aligns with you. And
Mhm.
I read this article where you said you have to keep being a version of yourself that people like. So how does that idea affect you as a comedian? Like during this journey, have you felt like you were stuck in a box and you couldn't evolve or change at times?
Well, obviously, I'm from the Bronx. I'm from New
Hmm.
York, and I think that people wanted me to stay that girl who was going through certain issues at that time.
Hmm.
And that girl is single. That girl was single. And that girl, was dating and she was going through other situations that I am not going through right now. So I can't continue taking from that same bag or like it's like
Hmm.
I can't unless I'm what, like 34, still single, being in the block and still drinking and be like, oh my God, so bitch. Like I can that there's a version of me that came from that, which is a came from a place of observing and experiencing and saying, this is who I am at the
Hmm.
moment. It sounds like Mad J-Lo. So when I was in the block, it just feels like, which I was running up and down the fucking block and like, and I just knew what it was like to, grow up in a situation where you're not rich.
Hmm.
My dad, it was 6 people in one room, just all sleeping in one room, breathing
Yeah.
each other's hot breath. So people want that version of me to stay that version of me. But I'm like, bro, I have other things that I want to talk about. Like I have observations of other things. Like I
Hmm.
want to talk about Hollywood. I want to talk about the Latinx out here that, are like, oh yeah, I'm so proud. Like I'm so proud of this. And it's just like, no. So I have to be a different version of myself. I have a partner who's like not, he's not from the same culture or like doesn't do the same things that I'm doing. And I wanna talk about those things. I don't want to keep talking about the same thing.
Yeah.
Get a
No,
man.
I
If you
mean,
want a man. I don't,
no, I mean, I appreciate that. And I feel like that's why people connect with you because it's like, regardless of the phase of life, you're still authentic about what's going on in that phase.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. And I purposely, which it has hurt me financially, but I have purposely decided to not jump on when TikTok was happening and everyone's like, yo, like you should get on it. And
Mm-hmm.
I remember having this hesitation because yes, it's a perfect place for you to grow and you're all the stuff, but it's a perfect place for you to grow when you know exactly what you want. Because if you just hop on this train and then you don't know what you want and you're just throwing things out there, there's a high chance that you could get stuck being a caricature of yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And then your whole career, you are chasing, or like a whole career, you're trying to be something that you're not. And I think that for me, the most important thing is balance. You know, I want to have
Mm-hmm.
financial wellness. I want to have emotional wellness. I want to have
Mm-hmm.
spiritual wellness. I want to have social wellness. I want to just that's my goal. Like just to be I don't care to be the most famous person in the world, the most like I just care to do what I love, to bring joy, and that everything that I do and the projects that I put out there
Mm-hmm.
connects with people in a way that is undeniable, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. So, okay, so honest moment. So when we first met, which was like years ago, and we did like a little happy hour thing.
Yeah.
So at the time, I had extreme like imposter syndrome around y'all because for some reason in my mind, I felt like y'all were just like y'all had y'all shits together and like you was working in the industry and you was just like doing what I wasn't doing. So at the time, I felt imposter syndrome. So I'm curious, like during this journey, I'm sure you have felt imposter syndrome, but I would love to like hear from your perspective how that
Me?
comes up if it does.
I don't have imposter syndrome.
It's like, oh, you the baddest. Okay,
I'm
excuse
the
me.
baddest bitch. Nah, absolutely. I've always had imposter syndrome. And that imposter syndrome came from a place of like, what I did, what I was doing on social media was so easy to me. It
Mm,
was so natural to me. It was so like me that I felt guilty for a lot of the opportunities that I was receiving because I
yeah.
didn't think that I deserved it. Because I'm like, I didn't do anything. And then when people would be like, "Oh my God, you're so great, you're so great, you're so great," I was just like, I have no idea what that means. Like this is
Mm,
what I'm doing alone in my room. And then what people didn't understand is like they'll meet me and then I'll just I mean not I'm not like that anymore because I have to understand I'm in show business. But I'm not, like I'm not the most like outwardly social person, right?
mhm.
But and then they'll get like, oh my God, I thought you'd be this and I thought you'd be that. Like you're so quiet, you're so shut down. I'm like, yeah, because the version of me was talking to this.
Yeah.
The version of me wasn't even talking to a person. So the version of me that you saw in a very comfortable place was talking to a phone.
And the energy is different too, like
And
depending
the
on the
energy is
person and the
different,
energies. Yeah, exactly.
which has been um one of my challenges.
Mm,
And I think that now that's what I'm saying. Like now it's just different. Like now I'm like, oh, I know what my purpose is. I know what I want to work towards. I know who I want to be. I know what I want to do. I know what, like now I'm in that space, you know?
nice. Okay. I mean, when you said that in the beginning of like the imposter syndrome and how kind of to me, I heard it as like people were just seeing your light. Like you're just like, like what's going on? Like I'm not doing anything special, but people are seeing something inside of you that they connect with, that they feel like is star power.
I had
And
to, yeah, sorry.
no, no, go ahead.
I had to realize and come to a realization that that is my gift,
Hmm.
to be a light in the world.
Yeah. And
That is my
so
talent.
that kind of allows me to transition into you acting. And when I was reading up on Righteous Thieves, I watched the movie too. I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed the fact that it was like a Latin cast that was
Yeah.
doing a bank robbery, which is not something we see on a everyday basis.
Mm-mm.
So I like that aspect of it. But the director said that they saw you as a star before like you even being casted, and that you had like comedic landing. So I would love to know, as an actress, how you built your comedic acting chops, or your like comedic like timing. How do you develop that?
Honestly, it was just being around my family. You have no other choice but to, yeah, that's just my family and both side of my
Hmm.
family. My dad's side of the family, they're more funny in like the way they say things and how they say it. And my mom's side of the family, they're more about the punchline and what you're saying. So I think that just growing up with that, it was kind of second nature to me on how I would speak to people. A lot of people would be like, yo, I love the way you tell stories. And
Hmm.
I'm like, that's interesting because I was only taught to speak this way and say things this way. So that's why when I did the whole transition from like Instagram to stand up, you get to
Hmm.
know more of the punchlines and all that stuff. And like it's a rhythm. It's how you're landing the joke. Boom, 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 boom. It's that's why it's funny because a lot of musicians and comedians, they tend to be fans of each other because there is a certain rhythm and a certain poetry that comes to stand up. That it's not just like
Hmm.
you going on stage and be like, yo, I think I'm stupid. Like it's not,
Yeah, yeah.
it may come from a very vulnerable place, but how do you mold that into something that is going to create a visceral reaction in people that's going to cause them to laugh, right? And it, with stand-up, it's like you have to always, the only way you're going to be a good stand-up comic is if you're always on stage. And
Hmm.
um and sometimes you can write whatever you want in a piece of paper, but your stand-up is never going to fully develop unless you've tried that material throughout different audiences. And then you go, oh, this one right here always hits, check. This one
Hmm.
right here always hits, check. This one right here always hits, check. And that's why when it comes to stand-up comedy, a lot of times you see stand-up comics have the same material. And it's because, oh, they're just trying to tighten up their set. So that when that transitions into acting, it's because you're so used to being in front of people that you kind
Hmm.
of already know what are the buttons that socially are funny, like social, you know, um,
Yeah, like
like
social
social
cues.
laugh. Yeah, like
Hmm.
social laughter. I don't know, the words not coming to my mind, but that is the very thing that when you're in a room, you get to go, oh, okay, I could say this right here, or I could say that right here. Which I would say this throughout my whole entire acting career. Every time I improved for the director, they go, oh, that's cool, but can we just do it the way that it says on the paper? I'm like, okay.
Hmm.
And then I'll do it, just to have that take. But they'll always use the take that I improved in. Because sometimes you kind of have to like, obviously you don't want to, if they tell you no, like, you don't want to be like, well, that's not, you just be like, all right, well, you have your take and I have my take, whichever take you want.
Yeah. But I think that's a really interesting point that you made about like the comedy, and like not only like have writing it out, but you have to like perform it, obviously. But that also like kind of reminds me of like the writer's room, because like we have the script, but we have to practice it and see like what cadence actually works, or like what notes
Exactly.
actually hit. So it's like, oh, as a comedic, then I can see like what like punchline I could put in what place, or what like pauses I can make to make this scene more funny. So that like that makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
So that's what happens, right? A lot of stand-up comics, instead of becoming actors, they do actually become writers, you know?
Okay.
Yeah.
For you, did you have any like main influences when you were transitioning from Instagram to like doing comedy? Where was there anyone that you were like looking at and kind of no?
Well, yeah, I will say this, like Ida Rodriguez, I remember when I first saw her on Last Comic Standing, I was just like
Mhm.
beside myself because I'm like, yo, this woman looks just like me. I love what she's talking about. It's so real. She was talking about the
Mhm.
relationship between her and her daughter, which was very similar to uh teenage relationships with their mom. like where you're like, I can't stand you, but you love that person. And I thought that that
Mhm.
was like something that I was like, oh my God, but I never went on social media thinking like that I would ever get to meet her or like hang out with her or like, it wasn't until I started doing stand-up comedy that I saw her again and just being like, damn, like I started to realize that the people that I admire and the people that are the funniest women that I think exist are not mainstream.
Mm.
They're just not mainstream comics. For some reason, they're not getting the same opportunities, they're not getting same stage time, they're not getting the same specials. It's like incredible, really.
Mm. I mean, I think that is what we notice, like people that aren't like, I guess, how do I say it? I don't want to say people that aren't Hollywood, but I feel like when you're, Black, Latin, Asian, like you see the people that aren't getting the opportunities and then the ones that are always getting the opportunities
Mhm.
and the stories that are being told. And it's like, you just want a lot more diversity. You want
Mhm.
things to change. Um, and that kind of, so I'll transition into the strike. For you, how did you kind of like deal with the strike and like the coming back from the strike? Because I know you mentioned that you were focused a lot more on your self-care, which I think a lot of us were during the pandemic and like this, but yours is a little different because the strike just happened. But during the strike, you were saying that you focus a little bit more on your self-care. So for you, like how has life, I guess, changed since the strike happened and versus now? Have things shifted a lot for you?
Um, it has shifted a lot, right?
Mm-hmm.
I feel like financially I had more before, but less direction, and now I have less finances and more of a direction, and it affected me in a way where I really got to see that this industry doesn't really matter. I mean, doesn't really care about the artistic sense of creating um movies, films. Like they
Mm-hmm.
they don't they don't care too much about the artistic part of it, which is the most relatable part of it. And they try to kind of like just see, okay, how can we turn this industry into a factory like production thing? And so they do that, and then you see them losing money, and they go, see, this doesn't work.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, because you're not, what makes people consume is relatability. And what
Yeah.
makes people want to be present, and it's because it's more than just, if I spend my dollar, you know, this which is plastic, whatever, but if I have a dollar, that is,
Mm-hmm.
I'm giving you my trust that what I am paying for is going to be something that I am going to walk away with something. Like it's
Mm-hmm.
gonna touch
It's
me.
valuable.
It has some sort of value,
Yeah.
right? But when you take that element of it and people pay for it, they feel robbed because you try to create like these things that are just not moving people
Mm-hmm.
emotionally. I'm trying to figure out a simpler way to say it. I don't know why it's not coming to me, but it's like, so people feel like bamboozled every time.
Mm-hmm.
They feel cheated, they feel robbed. They go, this shit is whack. Like, what the fuck am I watching this for? You know what I'm saying? Because
Yeah.
because it's just kind of like, we need to finish this deadline. I need you to do this, to do that, and the humanity within the project is gone.
Mm.
So
So for you, because you said that you feel like you have more direction, like what does that direction look like for you?
My North Star is to one, continue like doing live shows and bringing people together, doing stand-up
Mhm.
comedy and all the stuff. Um, Writing more, pitching my own shows, creating my own show. My
Mhm.
goal is to be an EGOT, to be honest. To
I
be an
love
EGOT.
that.
That is
Yeah.
that is my goal. I want to be the best storyteller of all time, on stage, off stage, on film, on TV. Like I just want to be the best storyteller.
Hmm.
I just want to tell stories that actually bring people together, that actually make people think, that actually move people, that actually like brings out the humanity in each and every one of us. Honestly, it's just that's all that's worth it. I want to do that through comedy. I want to do that through drama. I want to do that through anything that can make people feel and rethink their emotions and like I just feel like we're such in a surfacey world right now where everything is
Mhm.
like social media and everything is just regurgitated. So
Yeah, we're losing connection to each other.
we're not connecting. We're not connecting.
Hmm.
So I just want to be able to be like a Issa Rae, like a Adam Sandler, like a Donald Glover. That's like my North Star.
Love that. Love that. Okay, so I also do a segment called Biggest Boss Move. So, what would you consider to be your biggest boss move so far in your career?
My biggest boss move is sticking to my guts.
Mm, love
Yeah.
that.
Because there was a part of me that was like, yo, should I just ride this social media train on Instagram and become like a caricature version of me? And I kept
Hmm.
seeing all these people that have millions of followers do that. And I look at them now and they have millions of followers, but they completely feel empty inside. And I just couldn't do that to myself.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad you followed your instincts.
Yeah.
Going to our next segment, and I think you talked about this a little bit, but I normally have a segment called How I Do It. So for you, how do you write your jokes and create your skits? Is it a different process for stand up versus skits, or is it kind of the same thing for you?
I'm very aware of the conversations that I'm having now.
Mhm.
And so if I'm saying something that's natural to me and then, my friends are laughing, I tend to be like, okay, that's kind of funny. Or like if a thought comes to my brain and I think it's just like it makes me go like this, like if the thought that makes me laugh, I'm like, oh, that's gonna make other people laugh. And I'll just, that's like my confirmation that's gonna be funny to me. And then
Mhm.
it happens to be funny for everyone else.
What from this conversation, one thing I'm realizing about you that I feel like I'm really loving is the fact that it seems like you have such a confidence in your own thoughts and opinions. And I feel like sometimes that is difficult for me. And so it's like really like nice to see how confident you are in like the things that you like, the things that you find funny, your opinions. Like, has that always been a thing for you, or has it been something you've kind of grown and evolved into?
I think I've always been confident in what I thought was funny to me.
Hmm.
I think it's because I think to myself, it's just such a pure thought, I don't know how to explain it because what I have learned is how to modify what I'm
Hmm.
feeling. Or like if I go, I'm very confident in this, and if I want to talk about it, like what are the ways that I can say it that I can be very pure to the thought that I'm trying to explain, that it isn't misconstrued, right?
Hmm.
Because you kind of have to think like a lawyer in a sense of like you got to think ahead of like what people are going to say. And that's when you go, no, 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 no. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about this, or I'm talking about that, or I'm talking, because, immediately, especially with social media, everyone has something to say. So, but I think it's just another thing for me is like, no matter how different I think I am in the world, there's millions of people that are just like me.
Hmm.
There's at least 1 million people out there that are just like me. That
Yeah.
think like me. And I think maybe I think of people as an algorithm in a sense of like personalities. But yeah. there's someone out there that's just like you, as I think to myself, there's someone out there just like me who's as insecure as me, who's as like nervous as me, who's as anxious as me, who's as this as me, like, because how is it that if I'm saying that I'm anxious and all of a sudden I'm looking on social media and somebody's making content about being anxious, it kind of like re-solidifies or like reaffirms me that what I have internally is the very thing that keeps me related and connected to millions of people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. So, last segment, I normally ask these three questions, which is what do you regret, what do you hope for, and what do you want to manifest and receive? And I feel like you kind of answered that last one, but I would still love to ask you these questions. So the first one is like, what do you regret?
That I ruminate too much.
Mm,
I ruminate about my decisions. I made my decision, let's move on. Like,
yeah,
I regret being so guilty, feeling so guilty about things that I didn't know how to handle. Like I um, feel guilty about a lot of things I just didn't know at the time. And
yeah,
I just gotta give myself some grace, and that's what I regret.
yeah, I can relate to that for sure. And for you, what do you hope for?
I hope for balance of a fulfilling life
Hmm.
where I have an amazing career where I'm able to um create stories, star in stories, be in
Hmm.
front of the camera, be behind the camera, and create like successful projects that honestly touch people's soul and brings people together. I hope to build a
Hmm.
creative family that we all believe in the same thing. And our goal is to make that very thing happen. And the balance of having a great like at home life um of with my family, with my friends, with just people that I love, and have a great health.
Yeah.
And that's it. And
So
money. I don't want to worry about money no more. No, yeah.
that's what the manifesting and receiving is, right? The
Yeah.
money.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. I appreciate this conversation. I feel like it was very, um, it just felt very like grounded and very like just so thoughtful. And I appreciate when I can have like conversations like that, or when people can like listen to the conversations, because working in this industry is not easy.
Mm.
And so like to see people like even with the difficulties, like there's still a peace to them or a groundness to them. It to me is encouraging that like even though this shit be hard sometimes, like we can keep it going and we can keep pursuing our dreams. So thank
Let's
you.
do it. Yeah, no, thank you for having me. Thank you. I know it was like forever to make this happen, but
It's
thank you for
okay.
being patient and thank you for having me. I really appreciate that.
And for you guys to see more of Sasha, make sure you look into our description notes. All of her information will be there. And make sure you follow her and support what she's doing.
Thank you so much.